Oh, welcome back to the Always Reading Book Club. It is your girl Kiki Reader, and we are gonna do another standalone. And I'm also gonna ask you guys to put some names of some good series that we can dive into because I really just can't make up my mind. Um, so this week we're gonna do another standalone. This one is by an author named Vi. It's Vi, so it's either Vi or Vi Keeland, and the name of the book is called Bossman. We start off with our girl Reese. She is outside of a restroom calling her best friend Jules, leaving a message because Jules didn't answer, and asking her to please give her a call back so she can get out of this date. So while she's leaving the message, there's a guy standing there, and he's like typing away on his phone. And he goes, "Really? You're going to use that as an excuse? An emergency phone call?" He's like, "Do you know how long it takes to get reservations here? This place is not cheap, you know? Like maybe you should put a little bit more effort into the excuse because the guy's going to see right through the emergency phone call." So she of course is like, "First of all, why are you in my business? This has nothing to do with you. You're clearly rude," because he wasn't even looking at her. He was just typing on his phone and talking trash. So when he does look up, she sees him. He has like golden brown hair, striking eyes, chocolate eyes, gorgeous dude. So she tells him off and she leaves, right? So she goes back to her date. She did tell him, I did forget to mention, she did tell him that the guy had been talking about his mom all night. That's why she was so uninterested. So she goes back out on the date with this guy named Martin, and sure enough, he starts back up with a story about his mom's appendectomy. So she sees the guy that was in the back with her while she was, by the restrooms. She sees him walk past with his date, and she's like, "Yeah, typical big boob, blonde hair, typical of someone he would be with." So as Martin's telling his story, she's like in and out, not really paying attention. And she winds up looking over at this other guy, and he's looking back at her different times. And then all of a sudden, the guy calls the waiter over, says something, and then the guy and his date come over to her table. And he goes, "Reese, is that you?" And she's looking all confused, you know? But then she's like, "Yeah, it's me." Well, this guy lunges into this whole story. He says his name's Chase, and he drops that throughout it. And he made up there's this whole story about how they go back to middle school and how she was his first kiss, like all this stuff. And she's sitting there and she's just kind of like, this is insane. But at the same time, she does like the fact that he's over here and he's talking, right? This is the most engaged she's been in a conversation this night. They sit down, and when I tell you this dude had some great stories, he made up some great stories. I don't know if he's just a good liar or if he's just telling stories that actually happened to him and that's why he's able to do it so well. I'm not sure. But anyway, he says that, their first kiss wound up, she had a nosebleed in the middle of it and all this type of stuff. And she said, she broke up with him after he had done something. Like that, she's playing with him with the story. And the Bridget girl, who is Chase's date, she's all invested. She wants to know more about it. I'm like, oh my gosh. So they're going back and forth, and then towards the end of the night, she's ordering coffee. She really wasn't ready to be done, because she was having a really, you know, she was having a rough date, okay? So now it was like she got to have this fun, playful conversation. She really wasn't ready for it to end. But the night comes to an end, and the chick, as they're walking out, she's all snuggled up to Chase, and The valet pulls around our girl's car, which is a red Audi, and she gives Martin this little hug. She says thanks for dinner, and then when Chase grabs her, he gives her like this really good, hug, and it does feel nice to her. And he says, hopefully I'll see you at the reunion next year. And she gets in her car, she leaves, but she kind of feels like she might be leaving something behind. We fast forward 4 weeks. She's waiting at her apartment for a guy named Bryant, who she met I forget how she met him, but they've had a couple dates. This is going to be the second one. He seems pretty, and she also only has 1 week left at her current job. And she's been at this place for about 7 years. It's called Fresh Face Cosmetics. It's a family owned business. And she's doing a little job hunting, but she's not really focused. Uh, she just does it for a little bit. And then she winds up going on Facebook, and she sees different people from when she did go to school with them, and how, they're having children, and it makes her, of course, think about all the stories that Chase Parker had said. And so she decides to put his name in Facebook, and he pops up. Now, his profile is private, but she can clearly see that, yeah, this is the guy. So she has definitely thought about him these past few weeks. She even bought a Reese's Pieces, because that was one of the jokes he had made, said that he had made when they were younger, and she bought it at the checkout. And we find out she's got 2 interviews lined up, and it's like, honestly, she should be thinking more about, okay, what are you going to do after this job ends in, like, I want to say a week or two. But her brain is she's just not focused. Okay. She winds up saving the picture for, maybe her female spank bank. I don't know. But anyway, there's a knock on the door. She opens it up. It is the guy she's been dating, Bryant. And he's a really sweet dude. And she kind of feels bad because she's been around thinking about some other guy. And this guy, he's a really sweet guy. So he asked her why she had so many locks. And she said, oh, the suit has a whole thing with security, right? And he bought it. But that's not what it is. So hopefully we'll get more into why she's got like a slew of locks on her door. I'm figuring she might be OCD, or maybe it's something with, or maybe something happened. I'm thinking it's one of the two. So anyway, she goes to get some wine. He sees Chase's picture on her computer because she had downloaded the picture, but she saved it unintentionally as her screensaver. And so the Bryant guy is like, please don't tell me this is an ex-boyfriend that you are hung up on. And so she lied, and she said he was her cousin. She said her aunt had sent a bunch of his headshots, and her friend was like in love with him and made it the background as a joke. And she's so low tech, she doesn't know how to fix it. And the Bryant dude seemed to buy it. Next day, she takes the subway to her job interview in the city. Awful experience. It was hot. It was a bunch of people. It was a lot. So she gets to the first interview, and before she goes in, she goes to the ladies' room trying to clean herself up. Woman comes in, and she says, she had took the subway, X, Y, and Z. And the woman was like, you got to invest in a cab whenever you're going to a job interview. And she's like, you know what? That's good advice. She's like, I'm going to do that for this second interview I have today. That's the one I really want. So when they call her name, her name is Ainsley, something like that, Reese Ainsley. So when they call her, she goes, and sure enough, guess who the head interview person is? It's the woman she met in the bathroom. And she's thinking, damn it, So they're asking her questions. They want to know, you're currently employed. Like, why are you leaving? And she tells them, I've met the ceiling there. I feel like, you know, there's nowhere else for me to go. She also explains how there was a promotion that came up and that, she was the director of marketing, but she didn't get it because it's a family owned business, and she named the company Fresh Look Cosmetics, and that it was family owned. So most of the higher positions, executive level, those are held by the family members. And when she made that comment, the woman clearly got offended, and we find out why. So her father pops in, and we find out she's a Nepo baby. And she, of course, is saying, she earned her spot, and that, that other person might have been more qualified, all this type of crap. So she decides, our girl Reese goes, thank you all for your time, but we just gonna go. That's it. Because she knew she wasn't going to get the job. So we also find out a little bit more information. So Derek Elfman is the guy that two things happened. First of all, I want to say he got a promotion. No, someone else did. But the Derek guy, she hooked up with him at a Christmas party and regretted it afterwards. But then when she came to work, she found out he didn't just have a girlfriend, he just got engaged. And he wanted to keep banging Reese. He was like, we can still keep doing this on the side. So he's going to become CEO soon, I think, because the father, I wanted to say, who's the CEO, he's going to be stepping down, the founder. So she's like, she got to get out of here, Makes sense. I understand it. Makes sense. She goes to the next interview. She does invest in a cab, but when she gets to the building, they cancel the interview. So she never even got a chance to interview. So she goes home and she's thinking, you know what? She's just going to get drunk, and that's going to be her night. Well, she gets a call from Bryant, and he says, wants to know how her day went, how the interviews go. She told him. And then he said, well, how about you come with me to the gym? So his gym is Iron Horse. Now, when she pulled up Chase's picture on Facebook, he had on an Iron Horse gym t-shirt. So she quickly decides, I'll meet you in an hour. So she, of course, gets herself all cute, all cute, sexy outfit. And that's so wild because this ain't got shit to do with Bryant. And she does think about that. Like the fact that, okay, you're going to see this guy, but you're really dressing to see in the event that you see someone else. That is kind of wild. So they get there and she's on her phone. She's walking and she winds up running right into Chase Parker. He remembers her. The guy Bryant is like, I know you. And Chase is like, how do you know me? And he says, you're her cousin. And Chase, of course, goes along with it because, he can go along with a story. And they're doing their back and forth. And every time Chase says they're cousins, he'll say not blood related. The way he describes it. He'll say not blood related. And the guy just kind of looks like, why are you saying that? But it works. So anyway, the Bryant dude, he's like, well, I'm going to go work out. He's like, I'll see, and he leaves him there. So Chase says to her, he's such a dope. Where did you get this guy? And she's like, stop it. He's not a dope. He's really nice. He's like, yeah, he's so nice. He left you here with me. And she's like, yeah, but he thinks you're my cousin. He's like, again, he's a dope. I said we're not blood related. And she's like, yeah, but why would he think that would matter? And he's like, I wouldn't have left you with someone. And then he says, how did he see my picture? So she tells him, but she does the whole thing about, how she at least said she bookmarked the picture. This was cute how she came up with this. She said what happened was that she tried to bookmark it because she was going to send him a message to thank him for like helping her out that night. But then she chickened out. But she was like, if she ever wanted to come back, she wanted to bookmark it. but then she accidentally saved it as her screensaver. And he's just kind of like, okay, Now, the only part that's true is that she saved that she did not, she wasn't trying to save it as a screensaver. That's the only truth about that. And he knew it was, he didn't buy it. He just looks at her like, oh, okay, whatever you say, whatever you say. They got on the subject of her, looking for a new job. She was describing the interview she had. And he was like, oh, I know a great recruiter. And she's like, if you could give me her information, that would be great. And so they exchanged numbers, and he's like, I'll have her reach out to you. And I'm like, okay, here we go. We then go back 7 years and we switch to Chase's POV. I love when they do that. So there was a woman named Peyton that Chase was involved with. They were together. She was a musician. She was also an actress. And she did stuff that was like off Broadway and off Broadway. And she volunteered at homeless shelters. So when she was younger, her father left her and her mother and her siblings. And so they became frequent users of the food banks. And she likes to give back. So there's this guy there named Eddie, and they go to the shelter. He has been attacked. Apparently, there's been some teenage kids. There's this new thing where they're beating up homeless people. So Eddie has been a victim of this. And she's telling him how he needs to go to the police, but homeless people, they don't trust police. She went inside to talk to the person over the shelter, and they were like, listen, we asked him what was wrong with him. He doesn't talk to us. You're the only person that can get a word out of him. And I mean a word. Like, he might say yes. He doesn't do sentences. He doesn't. So they tell her, like, listen, we can't do anything if he won't let us help him. So when she goes back outside, she wants to know where he's sleeping, because of course he's not going to tell her. So she wants to follow him to see where he's going. And she can see as well that he's walking with a limp, the man Eddie. And so of course Chase is with her, but that's all we get of this flashback. So we then come back to the present. We switch back to Reese's POV, and she meets up with Samantha, who is a recruiter, and she gets all the tea. So Chase is like beyond super smart. He owns Parker Industries. She had no idea because she didn't Google him. I'm like, good grief. All she did was good old Facebook. Well, anyway, he created something called the Pampered Pussy, which started off, he had overheard bodybuilders saying stuff about, it was either bodybuilders or wrestlers or something. And basically, they needed something to help like wax them, but it would hurt so bad they didn't like to do it. So he found this numbing agent in the chemistry lab, and he created something that would allow them to take the hair off without all the pain. So it went from that to then women wanting to know about it, and they tried it on their vagina area and it worked perfectly. So it was the perfect thing for him. Like, he would give these women the waxes, and he would wind up sleeping with at least one of them because they were always throwing themselves on him, because he's like the package, right? He's smart, he's good looking, they want him. So his business, like, he built it. It comes from his ideas. She was explaining to Samantha how, the business she came from, it was a family owned one, and Samantha was like, oh, okay, I get that. And we also find out our boy Chase was a millionaire before he ever left college. He was already, before he left Brown, he was already making it. Samantha also brought up the name Peyton. They were all friends, and they had known each other since middle school. And apparently one time when because she let her know how she had met him, and she's like, oh yeah, he's great with stories, to the point that he did a story for what's her name, for Peyton, it was so good that the teachers were concerned. They thought things were going on at home, that because it was such great detail. It was like, there's no way this could not be true. It was just that good. Like, damn. Again, why does he lie so well? That's that's a little concerning. Well, then we also find out Samantha, she's not a recruiter anymore. She used to do it for other companies, but that she hasn't done that in a long time. She now just recruits for Parker Industries. She's human resources. And she tells Reese, you must have made an impression on him because he normally doesn't call me for this. So she tells her, listen, I'll look into some people. I have a few ideas of what we might be able to do, some contacts. And she's like, I'll get back to you. And she's like, the only thing, she's like, I have an idea of one place, but they're going to need someone pretty quickly. Like, they'll probably need you to start right away. And she tells her, hey, I've only got a week left at my current job, so I'd be definitely okay with that. So Reese is headed for her interview, and it's going to be at Parker Industries. She's running late. She changed like 8 times. The train was stuck for like 20 minutes, so her interview was at 1. It's 1:01, and she's just now about to get into the elevator, which she sticks her foot out to keep it from closing, and winds up falling in, and yes, falls into the arms of Chase Parker. So she makes the comment, I gotta stop making these bad impressions when I'm around you. Like, this is crazy, you know? So she had lost her shoe. He got it unstuck for her, and he tells her, you're not making a bad impression. And he said to her she had great legs. Well, when he gave her the shoe and he said that, she just says, thank you for saving my shoe. And he's like, you're not going to thank me for saying you have sexy, great legs. And she didn't say anything. She's like, I'm not going to touch it. So they get to the 31st floor, and she's thinking, oh my gosh, just, does he own the whole building? Like, she's thinking this stuff like, wow, this is crazy. So the interview is going to be for her to be here. And he told her, wait here. And where she was, she could kind of hear the conversation between Samantha and this guy named Josh that works there. And she sneaks to listen, and she hears Chase saying, you can't hire her. And Samantha goes, why not? So they're going back and forth. And Samantha was like, straight up. She's like, you don't want me to hire her because you're attracted to her. She's like, but that's not a good enough reason. And so he goes, fine, whatever. Do whatever you want. So now Reese is thinking, like, I don't want to be in a place that I'm not wanted. And so Reese starts to walk away. Chase comes out and sees her and runs up to her. And he's like, where are you going? She's like, why do you care? So she lets him know that she heard what he said. He's like, it's not what you think. She says, no, I'm pretty sure it's what I think, what I heard, you know? And so she told him, I don't want to be anywhere I'm not wanted. And he tells her, he pulls her into an empty office. He tells her straight up. He says, if you get hired, I am going to try and sleep with you. She says to him, you can't sleep with me unless I want you to. Like, you don't just get to say that and I do it. And she's like, I have a boyfriend anyway. And he says, he says some name, and she says, no, not him. And he goes, the dope. Whatever his name is, he's still a dope. And she's like, well, then we're not going to have a problem because I'm not trying to sleep with you. So you're just going to keep getting turned down. And he said, well, then we'll be fine. Shouldn't be an issue. So she's going to go do the interview. He told her a few things to say about, rooting for the Yankees and telling the Josh guy he looked like Adrian Brody. But he really does look like Adrian Brody. So the following Monday, it's her first day. She gets there super early. Building hasn't even opened yet. And she winds up getting snuck up by Chase because he was doing a run. And she said, what did she say to him? Because he was like, why are you here so early? She's like, I couldn't help it, you know? I was so nervous and anxious. I had to just come. So they wind up actually going to get a coffee first. And then he sneaks her around to the other side of the building. They have their little banter back and forth. And he basically lets her know they're not on the clock. So when they're not on the clock, he's going to flirt. And when they're on the clock, he won't. So we find out that over the weekend, she had bought a lot of the products from Parker Industries. And she figures, she can't really, she needs to be able to get in the mindset of these products. She's got to use them. Like, she can't come up with the marketing strategy and she knows, and she hasn't even, actually encountered the products. So he, of course, is like, they keep doing their back and forth. And he took her on a tour of the building. And he tells her, I got to keep you away from Amanda because she knows too much of my secrets. And she's like, oh no, don't do that because Samantha's a wealth of knowledge. So she sees a few people and she is a beautiful woman. One guy was like, I hope you're going to be working here. I forget his name. And she's like, yeah, looks like it. He's like, oh good, finally. And he says something about they have a no fraternization policy there. That's what Chase says to the guy. I'm like, oh my gosh. So anyway, she's made an appointment for after work. She's going to, Divine Wax, she's going to take it to her esthetician and kind of do a comparison because she figures, the esthetician's going to know this stuff the best. So it's after 6 o'clock. She's still there because her appointment is coming up shortly. And so she figured she'll just work until it's time for her appointment. So he stops by her office. She's drinking a Dr. Pepper. And that, of course, is in reference to he was at the gym and he had gotten one. So it's almost like they're doing certain things to kind of let you know I'm peeping what your actions, but no one's saying it. It's so weird. So she tries to get him to come out with him and the other people from the office. But she was like, nah, I got an appointment, so I can't. And then she gets a cryptic message later on that night from an unknown number. And she has a cat. It's a hairless cat. Those things give me the creeps. They really do. They give me the creeps. But she's taking care of this hairless cat because her mom, they thought she was allergic to the fur, but she's actually allergic to the saliva from the cat. She had gotten that cryptic text was saying something about like an ugly pussy because she had told him about the cat, the hairless cat. So she knew at that point, oh, this is from freaking old boy Chase. But we knew that he had her number because they exchanged numbers. So you knew he just wasn't going to give the number to Samantha and that's it, So I'm like, oh. Here, and it starts. So the next day she goes in, he sneaks up behind her and he's like, am I on your iPhone too? Am I your screensaver? And she showed him a picture of the cat. He of course made reference to hairless pussy and that he makes, waxes to keep swimming pussies hairless, like so much. So that night, this was a text message. It was something about, does the hairless pussy match yours now or something? Because he knew she had went to the esthetician to get waxed. So it's day 2. She really does love it. She really likes waking up, going to this job. And we find out she was that way with the other company as well. At first, she was that way for a long time. But then it started to change. So they're having a meeting. They're doing this whole, what do women want? They're breaking up into teams. One team's under Chase, the other's under Josh. And they're going to come up with like a list of 5 things that women want. And I don't remember the other people's, but I remember she came up with orgasms, power, and some other stuff. And so later that evening, she's there till like 8 o'clock. And he's in his running shorts, and he's like, "You're gonna make me look bad. 14 hours and you're still here, you know?" She's like, "I'm getting ready to go." So they came down, and she wanted to know what was the consensus, like what did they agree on, and he said one of them was like power orgasms and something else. She brought up about when they were talking about the orgasm thing. She was saying she brought up 50 Shades, and she's like, "Hey, that worked for that. You know, people ate that book up." And he's like, "Is that what you're into?" Meaning the type of sex that they talk about in there. And she says, "Not really, but I've never tried it, so I don't really know." And she asked him if he was into it, and he's like, he's never tried it. He's like, "But I maybe have thought about, a handprint on your ass, or, you know, you tied up or something. I may have thought about some things." I'm like, oh my gosh, because he started saying this bullshit once she said, "This is after hours." So she gets a phone call. It's from Bryant. And she's like, "I'll meet you in 30 minutes. So, because she could see his jaw tighten. He was clearly pissed by her accepting that invitation to Bryant. But she needed to get away from him because this conversation was getting away from her. She was enjoying it too much. So he says to her, "See you later, Buttercup." So she goes on a date with Bryant. Nice enough dinner. He invited her to come to Long Island Shore. One of his friends has a place there. They're going to be out of town. And so he was like, "We could use this place." And at first she was down for it, but something was still holding her back. So she was like, "Let me get back to you. Give me about a day or two to find out, because we just started this big project and I might have to work the weekend. Let me just double check." And he's like, "Okay, cool." So then she goes home, and she has this whole routine with locking the doors and checking every cabinet and everything. So again, I don't know if she's OCD or if something happened. So she winds up taking a picture of the cat, and then she sends it to Chase. And he's like, "Oh my gosh, you're right. That is one ugly kitty." And they have this little back and forth. And she made a comment saying how it's just her and the kitty in the bed or whatever. And he's like, "Oh, so you're not with Brian." And that, of course, let him know she still hasn't had sex with him. So he's happy. And he says now he can have a nice night. So, next morning, she's having coffee with her homegirl, Jules. Jules still works at Fresh Look, and she's complaining about how boring it is. She's like, there's no one to gossip with. She's a very open person. Her family they were, like hippies. And so she says whatever's on her mind. And so she was talking about a vibrator with a coworker, and she thinks she scared the poor woman. So she's like, she's probably not going to talk to me anymore. So then her friend wants to know what's going on with Bryant, what's holding her back from sleeping with him. And she does tell her friend about Chase. And sure enough, guess who pops up in the damn coffee shop? Chase. And so he comes over, and the friend again, she says whatever. And she said, "Oh my gosh, look, no wonder, look at you." So they have their little back and forth. Chase leaves, and that's when she tells her friend, he's actually like the CEO. Because the friend at first was thinking he was like maybe a coworker or something. And she's like, "Nah, it's all his. He's self-made." And she was like, "Oh my gosh." So the friend's like, "Listen, I have the perfect fix." So she goes, "I'll sleep with Chase. And then that way you won't want him anymore, because you're not going to go behind and sleep with someone I've slept with. And then that way me and Chase can be happy together. And then you can go bang Bryant and everyone will be happy." And she just says to her, "I really missed you." We go back 7 years. We switched back to Chase's POV. It had been a couple days since they had seen Eddie, and then they wind up finding him, and he's being harassed by police officers. So Eddie doesn't like to be touched, and the officers are telling, he needs to leave, he's got to go. The sergeant wants to clean up these streets, all this type of stuff. So eventually they're able to get Eddie to come with them. Our girl Peyton. And just as he picks up the bag that has everything in the world he owns, there's a hole in it. The hole opens and it just spills out all his stuff. So she takes her guitar out of the case and gives him the guitar case, and she's like, "It's the case just made the instrument too heavy anyway." She gives it to him, and Chase is like, what are you, where are we going to take him?" You know what I mean? And she's like, "Well, you just got that new office building and there's a lot of space there." We switch back to the present. Our girl is working late again. Reese is just, honestly, I do think she just loves the work. And I think that's why for her, she gets lost in it. So Josh sees her. He's like, "Oh my God, you're burning the midnight oil again." She's like, "Yeah." She asked him if they were going to be working this weekend. He said he didn't know, but he have to get with Chase. He left, and then Chase comes by, and she asked Chase if they were going to be working this weekend, and he's saying, "Why are you asking?" And she says that she got an invite from a friend. He's probing, trying to find out if this is Brian, right? But she won't say it because she knows that's what he's doing, but she won't give him that satisfaction. So he winds up figuring it out. It's more than likely her trying to spend time with Bryant. And he goes, "Well, you got to kill your plans." But she's smiling. And she realizes if she really liked Bryant, she would not be smiling at the idea that she could not go down to a beach house. She does not like that dude. So anyway, she leaves and she goes and orders a chicken parm hero sub. And after she picks it up, she sees this homeless guy and he's got a guitar with all his stuff in it. And I say, "Oh my God, that's Eddie. That's got to be Eddie." She said he has really sad looking eyes and he looks homeless. Clearly he's homeless, she says, but he doesn't look like he should be. But he does look like something happened. Like he doesn't seem all like something's off, you know? But she gives him half her sub. And now I'm wondering, like, with the Peyton girl, I need to know what happened. I'm getting anxious now. She winds up going out that Thursday with the co-workers for drinks. And there's one woman there named Lindsay. She's very much like Jules. She says whatever. So she's telling her all the different gossips. And we find out that Chase's girlfriend died really young. She was like 21. And apparently it was an accident, but that's all she knows. And apparently Chase took it really hard. And he had been licensing all of his products to companies. And now the licensing is going to expire, which is why now he's trying to build his marketing. So she was getting ready to leave, went to close out her tab. The bartender was super busy. Some guy was trying to talk to her. She's a natural redhead, and he kept trying to hit on her. And he's all like, "Oh, you're feisty, just like your hair." Just not taking no for an answer when she's telling him she's not interested. So then, of course, Chase comes over, saves the day. And the guy's like, "I saw her first." I'm like, the hell? She's not a pet. But anyway, the guy left. She was going to leave. He was like, "Just have one drink with me, you know?" And she's like, "No, I really should go." And he was like, "Come on." So he tells the bartender, close out her tab and put a new one on my tab for her. So they go in a corner, went off in the cut. They're talking. She finds out he's got a sister named Anne. Or is it Anne or Anna? Something like that. She's pregnant. And she sounds a little bit like a raging bitch, but it could be just the hormones. It could just be that. But when he described how her job was like 3 miles away or whatever, real short distance. Where they moved to was really close to where she worked, but it was like really far for the spouse. And I was just like, is she just a bitch? Like, I don't know. I don't know. She told him she's got an older brother named Owen is deaf. He went deaf when they were like 10. And that was kind of their back and forth. And he starts asking questions about Bryant, and they have their back and forth about that. And then eventually she leaves. We arrive at Chase's place. It's the day that everyone's supposed to come over and they're going to work. And she winds up getting there super early. And she's like knocking on the door and all this type of stuff. And when she looked at the email, she's like 2 hours early. And she was getting ready to walk away, but he comes out with a towel around his waist. And she's like, oh my God, you know. And she tells him, I'm so sorry. I came early. I didn't read the email correctly. And he said, it's fine. I'll put some clothes on. Come on. So he's like, I can make you something to eat. And he's just not taking no for an answer. So he goes and gets dressed, and she's looking around. She sees the guitar. She starts playing Blackbird, the Paul McCartney version. He pops up, and he has this stone look on his face. And she was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Is it okay that I played it? He's like, no, it's fine. It's fine. But clearly something's off. The energy has shifted. Okay? He makes her something to eat. He asks her how often, does she play and all this type of stuff. She says she hasn't really played in a long time. Music was something that was for her and her brother, especially after he lost his hearing, and we find out what happened. So they were latchkey kids, and so they had came home early on a Tuesday. It was either a Tuesday or Wednesday, but anyway, they came home early and their place was getting robbed. Their brother Owen pushed her back, and the guys had their Xbox and like banged him in the head with it so hard he concussed. And he was in a coma for a couple days, and it permanently damaged his hearing. So she admits that even to this day, that's why she has a bunch of locks on her door. That's why she checks everything. There's still that fear. He kind of let her know it's not pure fear, because pure fear is crippling. He's like, if you're still living, you're still thriving, it's okay. So she asked him if he played guitar. He said no, and that's all he gave her. That was it. He asked her about Bryant. Why haven't you slept with him? And she, of course, is like, why are you obsessed with my sex life? He's like, I just want to know what it is that you like. And he's like, when was the last time you slept with someone? And then she asked him the same question, because it's been a while for her. And when she asked him, he says, I haven't slept with anyone since the night I met you. And him saying that made her want to call Bryant and just break up. But she didn't do it. He asked her if she'd ever had an office romance, and she said yes. And it didn't work out. And he, of course, was like, well, that's why you have to try and try again. So she changes the subject, and she says, how about a house tour? And he says, yeah, I have the perfect room I want to show you. I say, this dude does not stop. We go back 7 years again, switch to Chase's POV. He was waiting at a bar for Peyton to come. She was like 40-something minutes late. She finally arrives. He knew something was off with her, and we find out she had followed Eddie again, and he had a big gash on his head. And it looks like it got reopened, and he had a black eye. So she had followed him to see where he was staying, and it was closer to Washington Heights, and it was under some bridge, and it was a homeless camp. And he's like, you gotta stop doing this shit. It's not safe. And she just, I don't know, she was figuring like if she knew where he was, where it happened, she could go to the closest precinct and they would maybe do a little patrol of the area. And he's like, promise me you won't do it again. And she promises, but it doesn't feel legit. So we come back to the present. Chase went away on a business trip for 2 days. She's been missing him. It's late. She gets a text from him. He's saying to her he wants to have a business meeting. She's like, okay, about what? He's like, about the fact that we can't date. I want to negotiate. So she's about to respond and he pops up behind her. She's like, I thought you weren't coming in until tomorrow. He's like, I came back early. I had pressing issue. So he's like, plus I was watching you respond from the window. So she eventually agrees to go, but it can't be any place too romantic. So they walk, as they're walking past the Iron Horse gym, old boy Bryant happens to be walking by at the same time, and we find out that she had broken up with him. So the exchange was awkward, and he, of course, is like, oh, I remember you. You're her what, cousin? He's like, yeah, second cousin, not related, not blood related. So then they left. They get to this place. They're talking. He's like, okay, so you're not going to sleep with me. That's off the table. What about meals twice a week? She's like, don't do anything with me that you don't do with anybody else. Well, he calls Sam. And he's like, Sam, can we have dinner twice a week? And so Sam did some negotiating in order to agree to this. But eventually she does. And he says, okay, now we can start eating twice a week. He's got this charity thing he now has to go to. That's what she caved him into. I was like, oh my gosh. So he says, I see you and Bryant are over. You broke it off with him. And it was the first time he actually said the dude's real name, which means he knew the whole time. He was just being a dick whenever he would say the different names. And he says, okay, so the parameters, what are they going to be? So she's like, outside of work, does it affect inside of work? No sex. And he's like, okay. And I don't think and I want to say she also said, like, not to be, like, basically dating or whatever with anyone else. And he agrees. He's like, okay. So she says to him, so even if I beg you to come inside, you won't do it. You're not going to come inside. He's like, nope, I promise. So it's Friday. They're having lunch. And everyone's talking about their different plans, what they're going to be doing. And they're probably not going to have to work this weekend because Chase has his gala thing. And she's thinking, well, if he's going to a gala, it's got to, I'm sure he's going to be taking a date. And so Chase comes in. He asks everyone what they're doing. And she says, probably going out with my friend Jules. She's wanting to go to this place, this club called Harper. So we're probably going to go there. And he was just kind of like, okay. And then they go on. So he leaves, and the team is saying how, normally he gets like a really nice hotel when he goes to those events and stuff like that. And she winds up having a conversation with him later about it. And he says, that's for Samantha and her husband. I'm taking Samantha. Like, I'm not bringing a date. And he's like, were you jealous? And she's like, no. He's like, yes, you were. And she's like, it doesn't matter. It is what it is. But he wants to see her on Sunday for dinner. She said, no, lunch is less romantic. He's like, fine. So our girl is out on the town with Jules. They're having a great time. They've been bar hopping. They finally get to Harper's, and we find out the reason why they're going to this club. So Jules has a younger brother who has a best friend named Christian. Now, Christian and her have been chatting back and forth. So she came to see him. Now, her brother doesn't know about him. And she feels like, they're grown. They don't have to tell him nothing, X, Y, and Z. They haven't done anything. It's just been some communication. So He gets them a table. He is very glued in to Jules, okay? And he gets them a table on the second floor. And so she tells Reese when they get up there that basically when 15 years ago, she walked in on him in the bathroom, and he was like massive. His dick was massive then. So she's always known he's had a big one. Well, he moved to California, and then after school he came back to New York, and now he's a cop. And that's how they met on the street, and they've been exchanging, communications ever since. So then Jewel wants to know, okay, what is it about Boss Man that you like so much? You know? And she says, he's soft but hard, it's just a combination of things. And she's trying to explain to Jules that they're not dating. And Jules is like, what you're describing is dating. Okay? You not fucking does not equate to you all are not dating. You all are dating, And sure enough, Jules starts smiling, and she knows immediately Chase his ass done showed up at the damn bar. So Chase and Jules, they have their little back and forth and laugh, and then Jules leaves. And we find out he went to the event, but he kept thinking about her. She said she was going to be here, so his ass popped up. So they started asking each other these questions, He wanted to know if she was out looking for a man. She wanted to know if this is how he looked for women. Just a bunch of back and forth. And then he told her that he wasn't going to, because she had been drinking, right? So she was wasted. And he had told her he wasn't going to sleep with her tonight because, she done had too many drinks already. So, no, she asked him, like, so no matter how much I beg you, you're not going to sleep with me tonight. He's like, nope. And she's like, okay, let's go dance. So Reese woke up in her bed, cats hit, scratching her. And it's kind of fuzzy of the night before. But she starts to remember how she got home. So she was dancing real dirty with him, tried to tempt him. She remembers Jules and the Christian guy getting really cozy, a cab, her laying in Chase's lap, and then him taking her upstairs and telling her again he will not mess with her. So yeah, she was wasted, and he was like, it's no fun messing with someone like that. So then anyway, she was still messed up. This is Sunday. She felt too bad to go on lunch with him, so she had to cancel. And her head was still hurting her, so she was like, it is what it is. So I was like, this should be very interesting come Monday morning. So Monday morning pops up, and he pops up at her door, her office door. They're having their little flirty banter back and forth. She's distracted a lot throughout the day by him. Later on that day, she's not paying attention, and she had just got a fresh cup of hot coffee, and she ran into Josh, spills all over her blouse. And so Josh is trying to help her. Chase runs out with paper towels, and he tells her, you can go to my private bathroom. I have towels in there. And he gave her a shirt. They've got some meetings to go to, and the first one, she's paying attention, but he's messing with her, saying stuff to her, because she can read lips really well, because that's what happened with her and her brother. When he lost his hearing, he got really good at reading lips, and she did too. So he's saying stuff to her like, I love my shirt on you, all kind of little stuff. So the second meeting, he couldn't stay in for that one, and so she was good. So by the end of the second one, here's the situation. They've got someone's got to go to Kansas City, and someone's got to go to the meetings that are going to be in New York. She volunteers to go to Kansas City because she's like, I need some distance. It's the day that she's supposed to travel. Traffic is awful. The company had sent a car and everything to pick her up, but she just made it. It's a good thing she had first class tickets because there was no line. So She asked if she could get a middle seat, but there weren't any available. And then, long behold, who comes up behind her? Chase. She is so stunned because, again, she didn't anticipate him. The whole purpose of her coming was she was trying to get away. So while they're flying, she of course asked him, like, why did you come? And he said, I couldn't stop thinking about you this morning. And we find out this dude don't even have an overnight bag. He just got a ticket and got on the plane. And he says to her, all I know is that when I'm around you, I'm happy, and that's all I know. I don't have any other answer. So they wind up doing another live session. He tells the stewardess that they're married and they're on their honeymoon, and they're stopping through Kansas City because his wife has an obsession with the Wizard of Oz and she wants to go to the museum. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this dude, he can pull from anything. And it's because she had on these red shoes. That's where it said I can't. So anyway, when they get to Kansas City, they wind up going to Nordstrom so he can get some things. She notices his tattoo, and she's handing him shirts and stuff to try on, and it has a lot of writing. And she's like, he is such an enigma. You know what I mean? Like, he looks amazing in a suit, but then he's got his nipple pierced and, tattoos. Like, he's such an enigma. So she gets ready. They go to dinner. She asks him what the tattoo said, and it says, fear does not stop death. It stops life. Pretty profound, it seems. He winds up talking about Peyton. They didn't get together relationship-wise until college. And then he got his business started up and off the ground. And then they graduated. And then 2 days later, he proposed. And then, no, I'm sorry. Let me say it right. They graduated. He proposed to her. And then 2 days later, she got taken out. He says they still have not found the person that did it. He was in a really dark place for a long time. And so his lawyers were the ones that were like, we need to license your stuff out so you don't lose anything. And so that's how he was able to make a lot of good money, because he was drinking very heavily and it was just a lot. So it's a good thing he had some good lawyers. He says that they start talking about, relationships and things like that. He didn't want anything serious with other people, but he told her, with you it's different. I don't know what that means. I just know I want more than you than just sex. So after they played a little game, this little back and forth thing, they have adjoining rooms. So he told her he was going to leave the next day after the first focus group. And he was like, I need to allow you time to make a decision about me. And me coming around you and trying to force you to make a decision isn't right. And I'm like, good. I'm glad he realizes that, He does realize it. That's good. So she goes in her room, mind spinning. She's laying on the floor, fingering herself. There's a knock on the door. It's Chase. She tells him to come in, but she's clearly aroused. He needed a charger. And he asked her what she was doing. And she was like, oh, nothing. And he's like, no, what were you doing? And he's like, were you touching yourself? And he pulled the hand and was smelling it, the one that she was using. And the look he gave her, it was just, that was it. She just goes, I quit. I give up. I can't fight it anymore. So she lunged at him. They start kissing. He picked her up. He went and got a condom from his room, came back. They had a nice hard fuck. And then she got sleepy. And you already know, when they put you to sleep, that is perfection. But now I'm like, what the hell is going to happen now? He wakes up in the middle of the night. She wakes him up, I'm sorry, because he was having a nightmare. And she knows a good nightmare because her brother used to have him a lot after the break-ins. And he goes in the bathroom for a long time, comes out. She, of course, is like, hey, if you want to talk about it, you can. He changes the subject to sex. He said, I don't want to talk. I want to do something else. They wind up fucking again. He eats her pussy. They have a nice hard fuck. Boom. Next day, they're at the focus group. And afterwards, Elaine, the woman who's over it, she came up and she said, she asked Reese if she was seeing somebody. And she was like, kind of, maybe, sort of. And she was like, well, my brother just moved to New York, and I think you two would hit it off pretty well. And so later on, when she was talking with Chase, Elaine was saying how, because they were both there, she was saying how she had someone for Chase as well. And Chase kind of was like, no, I'm not interested. Like, I already have somebody. And he told her, like, when they were by themselves, like, he doesn't want to share her. It's just the two of them. That's it. And she's like, okay, good, because I don't want to share you either. So then he told her, because he kept getting these phone calls. He was getting a call from the detective who had been working on the case for all these years. And he had to give her a call, and it rattled him a bit. And she was just thankful he at least said that much, because his mood was off. She could tell. So she was glad he at least, told her that. So we switch back to Chase. We're going to go back 7 years again. It's 2 days after the engagement. They're having an engagement party because his sister was throwing him one. And he gets a call from Peyton saying she's running late, but he knows what she's up to. That fucking homeless camp again. So he was like, I told you not to go there anymore. I thought we agreed you weren't going to go there. And she's like, no, you said that you didn't want me to go there. I didn't agree, or something like that. So he's like, I'm going to meet you. So he's like, I'm coming. So he starts going, and then he starts, because she hung up the phone. So he's calling back. He's not getting an answer. It's raining. He's calling. And then he freaks out because then her face pops up. So now she's calling him. And all she said was Chase. That's all he heard. And then he heard the phone get knocked away from her. And then he heard a sound that to this day still haunts him. He wakes up. He's having another nightmare. And he winds up telling her the story and the whole situation of the guy Peyton and everything. And Peyton, I guess, must have, how do I say this? Okay, when he got there, Peyton had already been stabbed, and Eddie was just holding her, rocking back and forth. And I'm just kind of wondering, okay, what the hell? Like, because he's rocking her back and forth. Did the people get away that fast? Because they're thinking it was the same people that were, like, beating up the homeless. And she tried to stop them, and they killed her. But I'm like, that's a hell of a progression. I'm just saying. I don't know. I wonder what actually happened, because I don't know. Oof. I'm wondering. Well, anyway, after that conversation, it did make him feel better because he was able to talk to someone about it. But she did still want to make sure that when they were in the office, they still would keep their distance. And when she told him why, he got upset, and I understand. She made the comment, when this ends, I don't want to, like, deal with all of that, right? Because it's going to come down on me. You're going to be fine, but the shit's going to come down on me. And he got real quiet. And so when they got to the airport, he goes to the restroom. This guy tries to hit on her. He's all territorial and stuff. And he told her what pissed him off, her making that comment. And she tells him, I didn't mean to, She's like, but I just don't have a good track record when it comes to office romances. And he says, well, just give me the opportunity. I just might surprise you. That was a lot of heavy. To hear that type of story, you know, that is so heavy. It really is. I wonder if she did it on purpose, right? What if it was a matter of, because it was so heavy, it might have felt like, oh, I don't know if I want to be in this. I don't know. I wonder, because that's a lot. That's just a lot, especially with the investigation still being open. It's like this ongoing thing, you know? We fast forward a week. They've been back in New York. They haven't really been able to play around after work because one of them's always busy. And so he's about to burst, right? And she told him, we can't do it in the office. Well, he concocted this whole thing to get her in his office at lunch so they could go over these photo shoots. So she, of course, is like, people are going to think X, Y, and Z because, again, she wants to be discreet. But it didn't work. He got her in there and his office, and sure enough, they fucked in the office. And when he goes to the bathroom to clean up, there's a knock on the door. So he goes out because she goes into the bathroom, and it's Samantha. Samantha's like, what are you doing? Who's in there? And he's like, what do you want? What do you need? And she's like, are you seeing somebody? And he says, yes. And she's like, well, I can't wait to meet her. And he says, you will eventually. And she tells him how the detective's been calling her since he hasn't been answering his phone. They also, Samantha, makes a comment that, with him meeting somebody new, hopefully he'll remove that shrine to Peyton. So Peyton's on a billboard that is outside of the office. And I guess that, what else would you call it but a shrine? So she's hoping him being with somebody else will kind of help him, you know, I don't want to say, how do we say it? Maybe help him close that chapter, or I guess that may be the best way to say it without sounding heartless. Reese, of course, feels like, okay, that was too close. We almost got caught. He, of course, he has no regrets. They go to her place and she tells him, I'm sorry. She tells him about her routine that she has and that she does it twice. And sometimes she checks everything more than that until she feels settled. And so he watches her and he says, okay, you do the first one and then I'll follow up and I'll do the second one. He didn't make her feel bad about it. And I do like that. I really do. So they ate Chinese food, and then he gets a call that his sister's in labor, and he asks her to come, and so she goes. And eventually the sister has the baby. She talks with the sister, and basically the sister's like, he's been talking about her a lot, and she's been looking forward to meeting her. So, these are positive directions, but I'm like, when is the other shoe gonna drop? So we go back 7 years. We switch back to Chase's POV. It's the funeral for Peyton. Now it's time to go to the cemetery. Her family wanted him to ride with them to the cemetery, but he was like starting to have a panic attack. So he told them no, he lied. He said, I told my family I'd ride with them. But that wasn't true. He left from the church and just started walking. And so he found a little dive bar, and he had his Jack and Coke and got drunk. And then hours later, he went to the cemetery because he figured he'd be the only one there. But there was one person there. And he didn't know who it was at first, but then he'd seen a picture of the guy. It was Peyton's father, because Peyton looks a lot like him. So he starts blaming the guy. He says, it's your fault. She was following a homeless person, and the guy was like, yeah, I know, I read it in the paper. He's like, but you know why she was doing that? When you left them, they ate at a shelter every night, and that's why she was doing that. And the dude was like, you're her rich fiance. Where were you when all this happened? And so that, of course, hit him. He has all this guilt. I don't know. I just kind of feel like she kept putting herself in that position. It's not like he wasn't trying to stop. He was trying to save her from herself, but you can't do that. That's clearly, you know, she wasn't going to stop. For her, that's who she was. That was important to her, and she wasn't going to abandon the cause. And here's the thing, you can help people. You don't have to take it to the steps that she took it. And you can still help people and be effective, you know? But it almost felt like an obsession for her, to me. I could be wrong, but it just felt like an obsession, you know? So we come back to the present, and Reese and him, they rode to the coffee shop together, but then after that, she wanted to get a couple minutes of a head start and didn't want to walk in with him into the office. And he seemed a little bummed about it. And the guy, Travis, that's the one who in the beginning was like, "Oh, you're going to be working here? I hope so." So that guy, he's there, and he's all in, they're talking. He says his flirty banter like he normally does. And then Chase comes up and does the whole, there's no fraternization, here, whatever. But it's not for him. It's not for Peyton. It's not for Chase. It's for the other. It's everyone else that works there. He can do whatever, which I figured it had to be, being how, relentless he's been in pursuing her. Travis leaves, and then Chase is like all up in this girl's personal space. And Sam walks by and she sees it. And she says to Chase, she said, good morning to both. But then she says, Chase, I need to talk to you about some things. When is your schedule open? He's like, I'm pretty open until after lunch. So she starts freaking out when Sam leaves. She's like, she knows, because he also told Sam that his sister had a baby, and he had made the comment basically letting it be known that Reese was there. And so now Sam knows there's no way she's going to be there unless something's going on between the two of you. You know what I mean? And she's like, you did that on purpose, And she felt like he was trying to force her to reveal their relationship. And he said, honestly, it wasn't. I really didn't do that at all. I wasn't trying to. I really wasn't thinking. And she said it again. I told you, I don't want that, because when this ends, it's going to make it a lot more complicated. And he, of course, shut down. And he's like, yeah, I don't want that to happen, So she knew when she said it, that she said it to get at him. And so for the rest of the day, she couldn't concentrate. She felt bad. He wasn't bothering her. And she realized she did that because she was falling in love with him. And it was terrifying to her. And she wasn't able to have a real conversation about this stuff with him. And that's one-sided, and that's not fair, right? So she went later on to his office. He wasn't in there. She left her underwear in his drawer. And she winds up waiting to see till when the button turns green to let her know that he's active. And she sent him an email asking if there was a lost and found, and also apologizing to him, and then telling him there was something in the drawer for him. Now they're doing these flirty emails that are very blatant when he says he wants her mouth wrapped around his cock. I'm like, okay, so fuck IT at this point, right? Because y'all just say whatever. So anyway, Samantha comes and wanted to talk to him, and he's like, I'm busy. She's like, who's in there? Is Reese in there? And he's like, I'll talk to you later. He's like, we can have dinner. And she's like, I'll see you at 6. So clearly she knew anyway. I'm quite sure she saw the looks, that he's been giving this girl. They seem to be very intense the way they describe them, So we'll see how she's going to react to it. That I'm very interested in. How is Samantha's going to react to it? Hell, I mean, she is over HR. So anyway, they go to Samantha's favorite restaurant, and she shows up, and Reese says to her straight up, we've seen each other. And she wasn't pissed. But I think that's because she already knew. She just wanted their ass to fess up to it, you know? First of all, him and Sam have been friends since grade school. But also, she the head of HR. Like, she need to know what the hell going on, period. So after dinner, they go back to her place, and he's had an alarm installed. And she, of course, thinks, wow, that's what he was probably doing today when he left for a little while, doing something for me, and I was a bitch. So they wind up playing a game of Would You Rather, and they, go back and forth with their different questions. So next day they go in together. She wanted to talk to her boss Josh about things first before they started doing the all out PDA, but Chase was already on it. She was getting some breakfast. The Travis guy comes up and they have their back and forth. Chase walks in and basically tells Josh, not Josh, I'm sorry, not Josh, tells the Travis guy like she's taken, right? So then Reese talks to Josh about it, and Josh does not take it well. Josh felt like he worked 5 years to get to this position, and he didn't want her undermining him. Like, if she didn't agree with something he said, now he feels like he's got to worry about her going to the boss, you know, because they now have this intimate relationship and him getting overridden. I'm not mad at him. I can understand why he would think that way. I really do. She, of course, was saying how she would never do that. That's not who she is. But again, I can understand why Josh feels how he feels. Because it's going to feel like, I'm not really over this department, am I? Josh told her, we're going to be working through lunch today, too. So she canceled her plans with Chase. Because, that wasn't going to look too good. Her trying to cancel with Josh. So after lunch, she didn't see Chase at all that day. She really didn't since that morning. Josh left, and then she sees a woman with blonde hair come out of Chase's office. And the way the woman touched his hand, it seemed pretty intimate. So she asked when the woman left, "Who is that?" He didn't answer. He was like, "I got a lot of work to do." And he just went, closed the door. And she realized hurt's about to come her way. So next day, no Chase. He doesn't respond to any of her text messages. She waited until like 6 p.m. and just nothing from him. He just gave the receptionist just gave her a message saying he wasn't coming in. That's it. So finally she decides to go to his place. And it looks like he hasn't picked up his mail in a couple days. The lights are off. She goes home. She's worried. She tosses and turns all night. The next morning, she sees that her text messages have been read recently, but he still hasn't sent her anything. So then she goes back over to his place. He comes outside. Dude looks exhausted. He looks incredibly sad. And she's asking him what's wrong. And he just says, "You were right. We work together. It's not going to work." He tells her, "I hope you'll stay on because Josh really thinks the world of your work, but this can't happen." And for her, it was heartbreaking because this was the fear. And she says to him, "The sad part about this is that you made me feel the safest since childhood." I'm like, damn, that sucks. So we switched to Chase's POV, and we're current, thank goodness, because I was getting kind of pissed that we only got his POV when it was in the past. Well, anyway, we find out what the hell happened. So the blonde hair woman that came, her name is Detective Balsamo. She's the one that's been working this case of Peyton's from the beginning, and he had been a mess at first. Like, he would come in there, hound them at the precinct, demanding answers. He was a lie. So eventually she told him, "Listen, when there's an update, I will let you know." So this is the update. Somewhere else in another part of the city, there was a waitress that was attacked at a homeless camp. Not the same one where the stabbing happened to Peyton. But the woman had taken some leftovers to this person, and she's a good do-gooder, and the person stabbed her, but she didn't die. The do-gooder was able to identify who it was that did this to her, and the reason she was able to do that is because when the detective heard about this case, she wondered what kind of stab wound it was. And there was this like little nick in the knife. So that same nick are in the pictures of the autopsy of Peyton. So when she compared them, she knew it was the same guy. The woman identified it's fucking Eddie. I said, figured it had to be him. Because I was like, how do people loot? Like, that seems like such a stretch. Okay, you fight people, you do whatever, but now you're going to kill them? That's just, So, this whole time, they had been thinking that it was kids that had beat him up and they killed her because she tried to stop him. And this whole time, it's the motherfucker she had been worried about. Heartbreaking. So apparently he was in love with Peyton. He has a lot of mental health issues. But once he saw that she was engaged to, old boy, that set him off, and that's why he stabbed her. So he's been spiraling. He's been drinking. He has not taken the news well at all. The detectives, he is competent enough to stand trial, the Eddie dude. They had 2 different evaluations. He has the mental issues, but he does know right from wrong. And the knife he used was the same knife that people at the shelter had said they'd seen him cutting food with. And Chase goes, "What does the knife say? Are there initials on it?" And she said, "Yeah, it had the initials SE." So we go back and we find out that when Peyton had taken Eddie to get him stitched up, him and Chase Chase was there, and the doctor was saying like either he's starting these fights or when they start them with him, he's not beating anybody up. He's just letting them hit him. He needs to fight back or they're going to kill him. So he had decided to go talk to Eddie, which was going to be like pulling teeth because, again, dude don't really talk. Peyton had an audition, so he took that opportunity to go to the shelter to talk to him, take him someplace, get him something to eat. And whenever he would say Peyton's name, that's the only way he could get Eddie's attention. And so he would tell him, Peyton wants you to protect yourself, X, Y, and Z. So dude held out his hand and just said knife. So at first he thought people were using knives to hurt him, but then he realized, no, he's asking for a knife for protection. So he gave Eddie the fucking knife. It was a knife he had bought a long time ago that it used to read SEX, but the X had like long been gone. And so he gave it to Eddie and he said, "This is only to protect yourself." But Eddie never agreed when he said it. He just took the knife and that was it. Okay, now I see why he has the guilt. Even though, how were you to know? But, that's hard. I feel bad for him. We fast forward 2 weeks and poor dude, he down bad. Bad. All he does is drink. So eventually his sister Anna and Sam come to see him and they're like, "You know what? It sucks that you found out, but at least we now have the closure." So then he tells them about the fact that he was the one that gave the knife to Eddie and they all cried, honey. They were like 8 hours there with him. Just crying, remembering Peyton, just everything. So then he called them a cab because they were not in any type of, you know, form to be driving. And so they told him they left and then they came back that same day and they said, "We'll be back tomorrow. We're not going to let you wallow in it like we did the last time. You lost a lot of years. We're not going to let that happen to you. We gave you 2 weeks. And so now we're going to be here every day. We're going to take shifts. And then Sam tells him, by the way, Reese quit. Her last day is Friday, so you might want to fix that shit too. So we switch back to Reese's POV. And it's Friday. It's her last day. She's gotten an email. This is her first time hearing from Chase, asking for her to come by his office. She goes, and Travis had asked her along for lunch, and she brought Lindsay along because she was not doing no date with Travis. They walk past Chase's office. He calls out her name. He asks if they can talk. She said she'll later. She's going to lunch. At lunch, they're talking about how awful he looked and all this type of stuff. Everyone's trying to figure out what the hell's going on with him. And so when she comes back, she goes to talk to him. But he didn't tell her shit. He just was still saying the same crap about him not the right man for you. But he still didn't tell her what the hell really happened. So she told him, screw you. She left. Sam stopped her and was, walking, when she was walking out with her things and told her, Sam said, if you ever need any connections, you let me know. Reese had told people she was going to start her own company, but Sam knew that probably wasn't true. But it is what it is. But Sam told her, just to let you know, it's the happiest I've ever seen him was with you. But he is hurting. He's going through a lot. And Reese was like, if he can't talk that out with me, then there's nothing I can do. Take care of him. She goes and has dinner with her brother Owen, and when she gets close to her place, they see cops. So apparently the alarm had triggered because there was a power outage, and the surge, when the generator kicked on, it did a false alarm. So the cops had showed up, and since they couldn't reach her, because she had like 5 missed calls from some out of state place, and she just didn't answer it because she was like, who the hell could that be? So the officer was like, well, we'd still like to at least still check, just to make sure. And she's like, oh, that's fine with me. So they checked, and then after she went and did her check, and then Chase pops up. He had ran there. And she was like, what are you doing here? And he was like, the company called me because like I'm the backup. And he's like, are you okay? And she's like, I'm fine. And then he looked at Owen, but he doesn't know who Owen is. So she sees that jealous tick in his jaw, but she just lets him be because she feels like he doesn't deserve any answers. He's not giving her any. She ain't going to give none either. So she tried to go to sleep, and, she just tossed and turned. So she figured maybe she need to go to the gym or run or something. Goes outside, and Mr. Chase is sitting across the street. And he was like, I saw your date leave earlier. And she's like, he says, I just want to make sure you're okay. I didn't want you to be alone. And she says, well, thank you. And then she asked him, why aren't you the man for me? And he doesn't answer. So this keeps being a thing. Every night he comes out, he waits on the stoops across the street. She'll send him a text. It's friendly banter. But then once she asks that question, why aren't you the man for me? He shuts down. So she's now reached a point after so many days of this. She's like, fuck this. I need answers, and I'm going to get them one way or another. Reese decides to reach out to Anna, his sister. She felt like Sam is a vault, between her friendship and the fact that she works for him. Like, nah, she might not tell me what I need to know. So she reached out to Anna. They met up at a Greek restaurant, which seemed to be like this family place because the owner took the baby and had food coming out, and they never ordered anything. So Anna wants to know, what's happened between her and her brother, and she tells her, he broke up with me. And she tells him what he said, and she starts crying because she knows, she's like, oh my God, and now he's waiting outside. He's trying to protect you. So then Anna tells her everything. And afterwards, they both crying, okay? And that she realizes that's got to be hard for him. He was the one that gave the knife to the person that took out Peyton. How the hell does he reconcile that? And Anna is like, listen, give him time, you know, give him the opportunity to open up, because she had told her, she's like, listen, don't tell him that you told me this. He needs to tell me on his own, you know? And so Anna was like, that's fine. And so when Anna invited her for drinks, to come over for drinks, she said another day, we gonna do it. She had decided, regardless of what happens between her and Chase, she likes Anna and she wants to keep that relationship. So then she starts bringing out snacks, cookies, cupcakes, different things. And they have a little conversation, her and Chase. And they keep this up for a little while. And then one night it's raining and she goes out to him and she's like, okay, I have a perfectly dry apartment. Just come inside. He's like, no, I don't want to give you the wrong idea. She winds up bursting. She goes, you saying what you say and what you do don't match. You are standing guard watching me, which is not something someone does who doesn't care about somebody, you know? And she's like, so if you don't care, I'll just start bringing men home to fuck. How about that? So she can see him getting upset, but he wouldn't say anything. And she said, it's fine. Don't worry about it. I'll leave the window open so you can hear. And she left. He, still goes. He waits outside of her apartment, but she stopped bringing him cookies and stuff. So a week ago, he decided to go back to work, and he finds out from Sam that apparently someone from Pink Cosmetics called for a reference, and it's for a job in Chicago. Well, that got his attention, because that means she's really considering leaving and going to a whole nother state. So he sees the same guy that night, and he gets pissed off because this is the same dude from that night of the alarm. So he's thinking this is a second date. So he winds up stalking him. He follows him. They go to an Italian restaurant. She seems so happy and so at ease with him, and he is feeling ripped inside, And so he kind of makes a decision. Oh, I'm sorry, and I also forgot to mention he did go to the shelter as well, and he's figured out the quote that Peyton had put up, which basically said, don't focus on the what ifs, focus on the what is. And it was that quote that was hanging in the shelter, and it kind of made him realize that's what he needed to do. He was focusing on the other part of the what ifs. What if I hadn't given him that knife? He needed to figure out how he was going to deal with what was going on right now, the present, who he, truly cared about. Like, that's what you need to focus on, because you can't do anything about what happened. That's done. She's gone. That's it. Which I still like, even though he gave the knife to Eddie. He did that because he was trying to help Peyton in her obsession. You know, she was obsessed with keeping this person safe, and so he was trying to keep her safe and keep her away from stuff. Now it wound up the way it did because unfortunately the person that she obsessed about helping was crazy, you know? And that was her demise, is that she couldn't let it go. She couldn't stop. I still stand by that statement. He would have never given that knife if she hadn't been constantly worried about Eddie. You know what I mean? So, hey, it's fucked up, but at this point it is what it is. We switch back to Reese's POV, and when she comes back from dinner with her brother, Chase is standing outside of her door. She tells her brother, it's okay, I'll message you. I'm okay. Her brother was like, okay, I don't hear from you, I'm coming back. So they go inside, they talk, and he finally reveals to her the story. And then afterwards, he tells her how much he wants to be with her, how much he needs her, how sorry he is for how he's been acting. And then he said something about her going on a date, and she reveals that it's her brother. And then he tells her like he needs to be inside of her. So they wind up having this quick, nice heart fuck. Because he tells her, I want to come inside you, and I don't want anything between us. And she's like, I'm on the pill. So they have their fuck. I also forgot to mention Sam was lying about the whole Pink Cosmetics calling for a reference. That did not happen. Our girl Reese hadn't even been putting in any applications anywhere. She really just wanted to take some time to herself. We fast forward a year. Our girl Reese and Jules have started their marketing company. They're doing really well. They just went out on a trip to San Diego, which turned from a 2 day trip to a 5 day trip. So Chase missed her terribly, and he wants her to come and work for him again, but that's not going to happen because she now has a successful business herself. So they're at a restaurant, which is the original restaurant where they met. A couple comes in named Henry and Opal. They've been married for about 40 years. He starts telling the lie again, saying how they've been married for 5 years, they've got kids and all this type of stuff. Well, apparently what he doesn't know is that before she left for the trip, old girl found out she was pregnant. So they are about to start a family. So then after the couple leave, they go back to a table and she starts seeing different people. She sees Owen, she sees Jules, she sees Christian because they're together. And Sam and Anna and all their family and friends. And we find out that Opal and Henry are his aunt and uncle. And so he does this beautiful speech telling her how much she means to him and all this type of stuff, and asks her to marry him. It was really sweet. It really was his full circle moment, you know, listening to him talk about wanting to have kids and all this type of stuff. And the fact that, he told her, no, I'm sorry. She said to him, I know I'm a little bit neurotic with checking locks and stuff. Are you still going to be okay with that? And he says to her, you are perfect for me, just the way you are. I do not want anything to change except for your last name. And that's how it ends. What did you all think? I really liked it. I really did. What I thought it was going to be is I thought it was going to be, okay, the dude that she met in the beginning that, that caught her trying to, do an emergency phone call. I thought she was going to start a new job and that was already going to be it. I didn't realize that it was going to. I like how they made it a little different, and they made it to where that place was not even on her radar. But with that interaction, it, comes on her. And she still wasn't trying to get a job there. She was just kind of like, okay, if you know someone with some contacts that can get me something, that's great. And the fact that it's wound up being her there, it was kind of cute. I liked it. I mean, how do you all take it? Do you agree that it was Peyton's fault? Like Peyton kind of brought that upon herself? Or should Chase be rattled with a ton of guilt because he gave the knife to Eddie? I want to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comment section. Also, some suggestions as well of any series you like for me to start, because I do want to dive into a series. So if you guys can also put those in the comment section, I will greatly appreciate it. If you are in the market for a beautiful notebook or journal, I do have those available. The links are available down below in the description section. Make sure you like and subscribe and share. And as always, I truly do thank you all for your support, and thank you for tuning in to the Always Reading Book Club.